Maye Musk never thought that walking into a luxury car dealership could end like this. She had been to many places before, fashion shows, red carpets, even boardrooms filled with high-powered CEOs, but today, this felt different. The glitzy chrome and glass interior of the car dealership felt cold as she stepped inside, her heels clicking sharply against the polished floor. She had come to buy a car. A simple task for most people, but not for Maye. She'd worked hard her whole life, seen her children rise to the top, and now, after years of supporting her family as a model, author, and businesswoman, she felt she deserved a little luxury. She wasn't here to make a grand statement. She simply wanted to drive something beautiful, something that reflected her accomplishments. Walking up to the counter, she smiled at the salesman behind it. He barely looked up from his phone. She wasn't used to being ignored. Maye Musk, the mother of Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla and SpaceX, someone who had made headlines countless times, was standing in front of him, but all he saw was another potential customer. "Excuse me," Maye said, her voice calm but carrying an edge of authority. "I'd like to see your latest models. I'm looking for something elegant but practical." The salesman finally looked up, his expression flat, eyes scanning her for a moment before he gave her a brief, dismissive smile. "We have some nice models over here," he said, nodding toward a display of high-end sports cars. His tone made it clear that he wasn't particularly impressed by her request. He was more interested in helping the young, well-dressed men who were browsing in the showroom, people who were more likely to buy immediately. Maye stood frozen for a second. Her gaze flicked over to the sports cars, sleek and expensive, but she wasn't interested in them. She was more drawn to a beautiful sedan, elegant, understated, something that would suit her lifestyle as she continued to navigate her years gracefully. "Actually, I'm looking for something a bit more understated," she said again, trying to bring the focus back to the car she wanted. But the salesman barely acknowledged her. "You know, ma'am, that particular model is really aimed at younger buyers," he said, dismissing her with a quick glance. "If you're looking for something more your age, I could show you some of these over here." His words stung, though Maye kept her composure. She had been in the public eye for decades, constantly being scrutinized for her looks and her age, but it still hurt. Why was she being treated like this? Was it because of her age? Her appearance? Or was it just the reality of the world, where the elderly, no matter how accomplished, seemed to fade into the background, dismissed as irrelevant in a society that worshipped youth? "I'm interested in the car," Maye repeated, trying to regain control of the situation. But the salesman didn't budge. He walked away to help another customer, an affluent-looking younger man. Maye stood there for a moment, her heart sinking. She had dealt with challenges all her life, but this felt different. She had been humiliated in front of the entire showroom, reduced to a stereotype, all because of her age and gender. It was clear they didn't think she was worth their time. Fury and disappointment mixed in her chest, and she didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She had been knocked down before, but this felt like something else entirely. The sting of rejection wasn't just because of the car, it was the feeling of being invisible, of being dismissed by the world she had worked so hard to be a part of. She wasn't just the mother of a billionaire, she was Maye Musk, an accomplished woman in her own right. Maye took a deep breath. She turned on her heel and walked out of the dealership, her dignity intact but her heart a little heavier. She would not let them see her break, but she couldn't help wondering if the world had changed too much. Would she ever find a place where she truly felt seen? Later that evening, as she sat in her living room, scrolling through her phone, Maye thought about the strange encounter. She had shared her frustrations with a close friend over the phone, but she was careful not to sound bitter. She knew that complaining about it wouldn't solve anything, and besides, she had bigger things to focus on. But the entire experience lingered in her mind. At that moment, her phone buzzed with a notification. Elon. She smiled as she opened the message from her son. "Hi, Mom, how was the day? How's the car search going?" Maye sighed, shaking her head. How could she even explain to Elon what had happened? He would have wanted to make things right, to take care of the situation. But that wasn't what she needed. She didn't want him to solve her problems. She was more than capable of handling things herself. "I didn't find what I was looking for," she typed back, her fingers pausing over the keys. She decided not to share the full details. Elon had his own battles to fight, he didn't need to worry about her frustrations over a car dealership. As she hit send, she sat back in her chair, lost in thought. But before she could dwell on it any longer, another notification popped up. This time, it was from her assistant. "Delivery scheduled for tomorrow. Rolls-Royce, 12 p.m. Maye blinked. Her heart skipped a beat. A Rolls-Royce? But she hadn't ordered one. She hadn't even been thinking about it. The last time she'd seen a Rolls-Royce was at an event, and it was a car that felt too extravagant for her tastes. She quickly checked her messages again, scanning for any clues, but nothing. There was no mention of a Rolls-Royce in the conversation with Elon. For a moment, she simply stared at the message, the strange coincidence of it all settling in. Could this be his doing? Had he somehow known about her experience at the dealership? The next day, at precisely 12 p.m., the Rolls-Royce arrived in front of her house, gleaming in the sunlight. A sleek, black machine, elegant, timeless, and undeniably expensive. Maye stood at her window, staring at it, the disbelief washing over her. What was going on? She couldn't help but smile, feeling a mix of confusion, excitement, and a strange sense of peace. And as she stood there, wondering about the mysterious gift, a thought crossed her mind: Elon always had a way of making the impossible seem possible. But why a Rolls-Royce? Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Maye Musk stood by the window, her fingers lightly tracing the glass as she watched the Rolls-Royce gleam in the sunlight. She hadn't moved for what felt like hours. Her mind was spinning, trying to make sense of the events that had unfolded in the past 24 hours. A luxury car. Delivered to her door, no questions asked. And she hadn't even mentioned a word about buying a car to anyone. The last time she had been near one of these cars, it was in a gala setting where the rich and famous flaunted their wealth. But now, here it was, a Rolls-Royce, parked just outside her home. For a moment, Maye almost felt like she was in a dream. She had raised her children to be independent, hardworking, and humble. And Elon, well, he had always been a force to be reckoned with. From his early days in Silicon Valley to transforming the world with Tesla and SpaceX, he had always been determined to make his mark. But this? A Rolls-Royce? It was unexpected. She had always believed that her children, especially Elon, would never use their wealth for things that didn't serve a greater purpose. This felt like something entirely different. With a sigh, Maye turned away from the window and went to the kitchen, making herself a cup of tea. It was time to think about this logically. What was going on? She couldn't help but wonder if Elon had orchestrated this gift as a way to comfort her after the incident at the dealership. Maybe he had been informed about what had happened, maybe even directly from her friend who had been there with her, and he had acted swiftly, as he always did. But was this his way of showing love? Or was there something else beneath the surface? Maye had always been an independent woman. She had raised 3 children on her own after her divorce from her first husband, Elon Musk. Elon, Kimball, and Tosca had been her priority. She had sacrificed a great deal for their well-being, often putting her own career and desires on hold to ensure that they had everything they needed. And, in the end, she had been incredibly proud of the people they had become. But it hadn't been easy. Her life hadn't been without its challenges. She had been a single mother in a world that often overlooked the strength and sacrifices of women. It was hard enough balancing work, family, and her own sense of identity, but somehow, she managed. She had learned to be resilient, and while there were times when it felt like the world was stacked against her, she never let it defeat her. May had also worked hard to build her own career as a nutritionist and as a model, not simply as Elon Musk's mother. She had spent years in the spotlight, but she had always maintained a sense of dignity and strength, showing the world that she was more than just the woman who had birthed a billionaire. She was Maye Musk, someone who had lived a full life, who had loved deeply, and who had never stopped believing in herself. But today was different. She had experienced something that shook her, a reminder that, no matter how far you come, there were always people who would reduce you to nothing more than a stereotype. Ageism was alive and well in the world of luxury goods, and May had been reminded of that in the harshest way possible. The treatment she had received at the car dealership had stung. It wasn't just about the rejection of her purchasing power, it was about the way they looked at her as though she didn't belong in their world. It was the kind of thing she had become all too familiar with in her life. People often underestimated her because of her age, because of her gender. She had always brushed it off, but that day, it had gotten under her skin. And now, this Rolls-Royce. May's phone buzzed on the counter, snapping her out of her thoughts. She glanced at the screen. It was a message from Elon. "Mom, I hope the delivery went smoothly. I know you've been looking at new cars, and I thought this might be the perfect gift. Don't worry about the cost. Just enjoy it. You deserve it. Love you." Her heart warmed at the message. It was typical of Elon, he was always looking out for her, always wanting to give her the best. But still, something didn't sit right. She hadn't asked for this. In fact, she hadn't even planned on buying anything at all. And yet here it was, a gift so extravagant that it took her breath away. May couldn't help but smile as she read the message again. She had raised Elon to be kind, to value family, to understand the importance of love and support. He was fiercely protective of the people he cared about, and this car, this surprising gift, was his way of taking care of her, of showing her that she was still someone important in his world. But what did it mean for her? May had always tried to maintain a level of independence, even as her children's success soared to astronomical heights. She didn't want to rely on them financially or emotionally. She wanted to continue to build her own legacy, even as she got older. This car, while undoubtedly a thoughtful gesture, seemed to threaten that independence. Was Elon treating her like a child? Was he trying to make up for the embarrassment she had felt the day before? As much as she loved her son and appreciated the gesture, she wasn't sure how to feel about it. Part of her wanted to reject it, to prove that she could do it on her own. But another part of her felt a deep sense of gratitude, knowing that Elon truly understood her. May took a deep breath and typed a response. "Thank you, Elon. It's an amazing gift, and I'm very grateful. But you know me, I don't need expensive things to feel loved. I hope you're not spoiling me too much." She paused, unsure if she should send the message. After a few moments, she pressed send. The phone buzzed almost immediately. "You're never spoiled enough, Mom. Enjoy the ride. You've earned it." May smiled. She had raised a remarkable son. A son who had become one of the most successful people on the planet. But in moments like this, she remembered that, despite everything, he was still her little boy, the one who had once needed her comfort when he was feeling low, the one who had always looked up to her for guidance. As May stood in the kitchen, the weight of the car dealership experience, coupled with Elon's surprise gift, made her reflect on her life. She had fought so hard to be seen, to be respected. But in this moment, perhaps she realized, she had already earned the respect she needed from the one person who mattered most, her son. The next day, May couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled in her chest since the Rolls-Royce had arrived. The car sat outside her house like a reminder of the complexity of her life, of the people she had raised, the sacrifices she had made, and the subtle ways in which her identity had always been tied to the expectations of others. She had spent the morning looking at it from her window, wondering why Elon had felt the need to intervene so suddenly. Sure, he had always been generous, but this wasn't just about generosity. There was something more at play here. She hadn't spoken to him since he'd sent the last message, and she wasn't sure if she was ready to address it yet. May had always prided herself on being independent, her children knew that. Even as Elon's empire grew, she had tried to maintain her own life. She had been an accomplished woman long before Elon had become a billionaire. In fact, May had built her own career as a model, nutritionist, and author, long before anyone knew the name Musk outside of South Africa. But with the constant media scrutiny that came with being Elon Musk's mother, she had often felt like her own identity had been pushed to the background. It had been a slow realization that her accomplishments had somehow been overshadowed by her son's fame. But despite that, she had always refused to be defined by his success. She knew she was more than that. She had to be. Taking a sip of her coffee, May glanced at her phone again. Another message from Elon. "Mom, I'm flying in this weekend for a meeting with the board. I'll stop by to see you if you're free. Love you." She smiled softly. Elon was always thinking about others, even with his busy schedule. Her heart swelled with pride. Of course, she was free to see him. She always was. But she couldn't avoid the issue any longer. The Rolls-Royce. Her independence. Her sense of self. May wasn't sure how to balance the love and care Elon was showing her with her own desire to remain self-sufficient. The luxury car outside had shaken her more than she had initially realized. As she sat at her desk, her thoughts wandered back to the dealership experience. The way she had been dismissed by that salesman, her anger had simmered for hours afterward. She had been humiliated. But it wasn't just the car. It was the way they had treated her. The subtle reminders that, as she got older, society expected her to fade into the background, to be quiet and irrelevant. She had worked too hard for that. She had earned the right to be seen and respected. And yet, that moment had hit her harder than anything in recent years. She had told herself to shake it off, to move forward. But she couldn't stop the feelings of hurt that lingered. The incident had made her wonder if it was time to step away from this constant battle to prove her worth. Could she just take a step back and enjoy the fruits of her labor? Was that even allowed? Her phone buzzed again, this time with an unfamiliar number. "Hello, May. I hope this message finds you well. This is Marcus, from the dealership you visited yesterday. I wanted to personally apologize for the way you were treated. We value our customers and would love the opportunity to make things right. Please let us know if you would be open to discussing this further. We understand if you're hesitant, but we're committed to delivering the level of service you deserve." May sat back in her chair, staring at the message. She hadn't expected this. After the cold treatment she'd received, she wasn't sure what to think. Her initial instinct was to dismiss it. She had already walked away from that experience. It wasn't about the car anymore, it was about the principle. But then, she thought about it again. Maybe this was an opportunity for closure. Maybe this was a chance to confront what had been eating at her. She took a deep breath, then typed back. "Thank you for your message, Marcus. I appreciate the apology. It's not just about the car, it's about the respect every customer should receive, regardless of their age or appearance. I'm open to discussing this further. Let's arrange a time." May hit send, unsure of what to expect next. Would they try to win her over with extravagant promises? Would they show her that not all businesses treated people like they were invisible? Or would it be more of the same? She placed the phone down and stared out the window. The day was warm, the sky a soft blue. It seemed almost surreal, this strange mixture of the personal and the professional that her life had become. She thought about the strength she had carried with her through the years, and how it had gotten her through some of her toughest moments. But there were days, like today, when it felt like that strength wasn't enough. When it felt like the world just kept pushing you aside. The sound of the doorbell interrupted her thoughts. She quickly rose from her desk and walked toward the door. As she opened it, she saw her assistant standing there, holding an envelope. "Delivery for you, Mrs. Musk, the assistant said with a polite smile. May took the envelope, feeling a twinge of curiosity. It was thick and sealed. She opened it carefully and unfolded the letter inside. It was an invitation to an exclusive event in New York City. A gala hosted by a prestigious charity organization, focused on empowering women in business. As she read through the invitation, her thoughts began to settle into place. This was an opportunity to remind the world of who she was. To make a statement about her own identity, her own strength, and her place in this world. She had been invited to be a keynote speaker. May smiled to herself, the excitement slowly rising within her. This was it. This was the chance she had been waiting for. A platform to share her story and remind everyone that she wasn't just Elon's mother, she was Maye Musk, an accomplished woman in her own right. It was time to reclaim her narrative. The sting of the car dealership incident, the uncertainty about the Rolls-Royce, all of it faded into the background. This was her moment. She looked down at the phone. Another message from Elon. I've got your back, Mom. You're stronger than you think. For the first time in days, May felt a sense of peace. No matter how many obstacles she faced, no matter how many people tried to diminish her, she would rise above. She always had. And she always would. The weeks following the invitation to the charity gala were a whirlwind for May. She spent the days preparing her speech, carefully selecting the words that would capture not just her story, but the very essence of who she had become. The speech wasn't just a chance to reflect on her life, but also an opportunity to speak directly to the women in the room who might be feeling the way she had at so many points in her career, overlooked, underestimated, and underappreciated. But the excitement of the event wasn't the only thing that kept her occupied. The lingering thoughts about the Rolls-Royce remained, constantly in the back of her mind, as though it were a chapter she couldn't quite close. Elon had sent her another message, confirming his arrival to New York for the gala. She hadn't yet confronted him about the car, but the closer the event came, the more pressing it felt. She needed to address it, and she needed to do it soon. In the days leading up to the gala, May found herself reflecting more deeply on her relationship with her children, especially Elon. They had always been close, but this gift, this gesture, felt like something more than just a token of affection. It felt like an attempt to fix something, to mend a wound she hadn't even realized was there. The more she thought about it, the more she realized that she hadn't given Elon enough credit for the complexities of his emotions. He wasn't just the successful billionaire who could buy anything he wanted, he was her son, with a deep love for his family and a genuine desire to protect and care for them. But there were boundaries she needed to maintain. She wasn't a child. She wasn't someone to be coddled, no matter how well-intentioned the gesture. As much as she appreciated the car, she knew that the gift came with an emotional undertone that needed to be unpacked. And that unpacking, she decided, would begin at the gala. The night of the event arrived, and May stood in front of the mirror in her hotel room, adjusting the strap of her gown. The fabric shimmered as the light caught it, and she felt a sense of empowerment that she hadn't felt in years. She was ready to speak her truth, ready to stand in the spotlight for her own accomplishments, not just as Elon's mother, but as Maye Musk, the woman who had worked tirelessly to get where she was. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. "Mom, you look incredible," Elon's voice came from the other side of the door. She opened it to find him standing there, his usual reserved demeanor softened by a smile. He was dressed in a sharp black tuxedo, his hair neatly styled. For a moment, May saw the young boy she had raised, the one who used to be so full of energy and curiosity. The boy who used to ask her every question under the sun, who would sneak into her bed in the middle of the night when he had nightmares. The boy who had grown into the man standing before her, whose face was now plastered on the cover of magazines around the world. "Thank you, Elon," she said, a hint of emotion in her voice. "You're looking very handsome yourself." He stepped into the room, looking at her with a mix of pride and admiration. "You're going to own that stage tonight, Mom." "I have no doubt about it." May smiled softly, but her heart tightened. The anticipation of her speech was high, but she couldn't help but wonder, what had he been thinking when he sent the car? Why hadn't he just called her and asked what was really going on? Why had he jumped straight to a material solution, when what she really needed was an emotional one? I've been thinking about what happened with the dealership, Maye said, breaking the silence. And I've been thinking about the car. About you, too. Elon's face softened as he walked closer, his eyes showing a mixture of concern and understanding. I know, Mom. I didn't mean to overstep. I don't want you to feel like you're alone in this. After everything you've done for me, I just wanted to show you that I'm here for you. Maye felt a lump form in her throat. She had always known that Elon loved her, but it was moments like this that made her realize just how deeply he cared. And yet, at the same time, she couldn't shake the feeling that he saw her as someone who needed protection, someone who couldn't handle the harsh realities of the world without his help. I don't need you to fix things for me, Elon, she said, her voice steady but firm. I need to know that you trust me to handle things on my own. I don't need a Rolls-Royce to feel loved. I don't need anything but your respect. I've spent my life proving that I can stand on my own 2 feet. And I will continue to do so. Elon looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he nodded. I hear you, Mom. And I respect you more than you know, he said, his voice soft. I just want you to be happy. But I understand now. I'll respect your space. Maye's heart swelled with pride. There were moments in life when you realized that no matter how big the world became, no matter how much wealth or success you accumulated, the most important thing was love. And the bond between a mother and her son was something no amount of money could replace. As they stood there, just the two of them, Maye felt a weight lift off her shoulders. The conversation had been difficult, but necessary. She had spoken her truth, and in doing so, she had gained something far more valuable than a car, a deeper understanding with her son. I'm proud of you, Elon, she said, her voice thick with emotion. But don't forget, you're not just my son. You're a force of nature, and you've created something extraordinary. And I'm lucky to be part of your world. Elon smiled, his eyes glistening. And I'm lucky to be part of yours. They embraced briefly before stepping out into the night, ready to face the gala together. Maye could feel the energy in the air, the excitement, the anticipation. This wasn't just another gala. This was her moment to speak for herself. As they arrived at the venue, the lights dazzled in the distance. The red carpet was rolled out, and the world of luxury and influence awaited her. But Maye knew that this wasn't about the spotlight. It was about speaking her truth, sharing her story, and showing the world that she was still here, not just as Elon's mother, but as Maye Musk, a woman who had always known her worth. The night of the gala was everything Maye had anticipated, and more. The venue, an opulent ballroom in the heart of New York City, was bathed in golden light. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting a soft glow over the crowd of elegant, powerful individuals. The guests were an eclectic mix of philanthropists, entrepreneurs, politicians, and celebrities, all gathered to raise awareness and funds for the empowerment of women in business. But for Maye, the night was about more than just raising money. It was her chance to stand in front of the world and remind them that she was more than just a supporting character in her son's story. As she stepped out onto the stage, the applause that greeted her felt almost overwhelming. The sound of hundreds of people clapping echoed in her ears, and for a moment, she felt a wave of nervousness wash over her. But then she took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle into her bones. She had spent a lifetime preparing for this, not for the applause, but for the chance to speak from her heart. The spotlight on her was intense, and she could feel every eye in the room on her. But she was ready. Thank you, Maye began, her voice clear and steady, though her heart was racing. Thank you to everyone here tonight for your support, your passion, and your commitment to empowering women in business. I'm honored to be here with all of you. The applause died down, and Maye could see the faces of the audience members, many of whom were women who had worked tirelessly to build their careers. Their eyes were filled with expectation, and perhaps a little bit of envy, too. She knew what it felt like to be underestimated, to be discounted because of age or gender. But tonight was different. Tonight, she wasn't going to allow anyone to reduce her to that. She paused, allowing the silence to grow, before continuing. I've spent my life wearing many hats. I've been a model, a mother, an entrepreneur, and now, perhaps most importantly, a voice for women who've had to fight for recognition in spaces where they were told they didn't belong. She glanced around the room, noticing the mixture of admiration and curiosity in the faces of the audience. The nerves that had earlier gripped her were now replaced with a growing sense of purpose. I think we all know how it feels to be overlooked. To be passed over for opportunities simply because we don't fit the mold that others expect us to, Maye said, her voice gaining strength. I remember a time when I, too, felt like I didn't matter. When I, too, was dismissed because I wasn't young enough, or beautiful enough, or, quite frankly, rich enough to be taken seriously. But I've learned something along the way, none of those things define who I am. She felt a shift in the room, a collective energy that seemed to draw the audience closer to her. It was as if they could feel the truth in her words. I've spent my life building my own path, one step at a time, she continued. And along that path, I've encountered many obstacles, many people who have tried to tell me who I should be. But I've learned that I am not defined by the expectations of others. I am defined by my own strength, my own resilience, and my own desire to make a difference. Maye let the words hang in the air for a moment, allowing them to sink in. She could see a few nodding heads in the audience, some women who were likely fighting their own battles, trying to break through their own barriers. She knew they understood. But even as I stand here tonight, she said, I am not just speaking to women who are already established, women who have already made their mark. I am speaking to the young women in this room, the ones who are just beginning their journey. The ones who are wondering if they have what it takes. The ones who are told that they can't do it because of their gender, their age, or their background. Maye's eyes scanned the crowd, searching for that spark of hope she knew existed in every room she entered. She saw it now, in the way a young woman in the front row was watching her, her hands clasped together in anticipation. Maye smiled inwardly. I want you to know something, Maye said, her voice steady but filled with conviction. You are enough. You are more than enough. The world may try to tell you otherwise, but don't let it. I'm here to tell you that if I can rise above the noise, if I can continue to push forward even when the world seems to have written me off, then so can you. She felt a rush of emotion as she spoke those words. It wasn't just about empowering others, it was about empowering herself, too. This was her story, her truth, her fight. And in that moment, she realized something profound, no one could take that from her. Maye paused, gathering herself before delivering the final words of her speech. So, to all the women in this room, to every woman who has ever felt like giving up, to every woman who has been told she's too old, too weak, or too different, I stand here tonight to tell you that you are worthy. You are powerful. And together, we will change the narrative. We will make sure that no woman ever feels invisible again. The room was silent for a moment, and then the applause came, louder than before, filling the air with a sense of unity and hope. Maye stood there, her heart swelling with pride. She had done it. She had spoken her truth, and in doing so, she had inspired not just the women in the room, but herself as well. As she stepped down from the stage, the flood of emotions hit her. The sense of relief, of accomplishment, of having shared something deeply personal. She had found her voice again. And she knew that this was just the beginning of something much larger than she had ever imagined. Elon was waiting for her backstage, a proud smile on his face. You were amazing, Mom, he said, his voice full of admiration. Maye's heart warmed at his words, but there was something she needed to say. Thank you, Elon, she began, her voice filled with sincerity. But I want you to know that tonight wasn't about the car. It wasn't about any material gift. It was about the respect I've earned. And I hope, in time, you'll understand that I don't need anything to feel validated. I just need to keep doing what I've always done, be myself. Elon's smile softened, and he nodded, his eyes filled with understanding. I get it, Mom. I really do. You're stronger than I ever gave you credit for. Maye smiled, feeling the weight of years of struggle and triumph lift from her shoulders. She had found her voice, and in doing so, she had rediscovered a part of herself she hadn't realized she had lost. It wasn't about proving anything to anyone. It was about proving to herself that she was enough. As they walked into the crowd, Maye felt a sense of peace settle in her heart. This was her moment. And for the first time in a long time, she felt truly free. The next few days following the gala were a blur of media interviews, charity meetings, and congratulatory messages from old friends and colleagues. Maye felt a rush of excitement, not from the attention or the accolades, but from the validation she'd given herself that night. She had spoken her truth and shared her story with the world, and for the first time, it wasn't about anyone else's narrative. It was about hers. She'd returned to her hotel room after the gala, feeling a mix of elation and exhaustion. The evening had ended with her reflecting on how far she'd come and how much further she still wanted to go. Yet, there was one lingering question that refused to leave her mind: what next? She had shown the world who she was, but there was still something unspoken between her and Elon, something that hadn't fully been resolved. She hadn't had a chance to properly process her conversation with him about the Rolls-Royce. He'd nodded and accepted her boundaries, but the truth was, the gesture of the car still weighed on her. It wasn't the materialism that bothered her, it was the idea of being rescued. She didn't need saving. What she needed was the space to stand on her own. She hoped that Elon truly understood that. Just as she was lost in thought, her phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. Maye hesitated for a moment before answering, wondering if it was another press request. "Hello," she answered, her voice steady but curious. "Is this Maye Musk?" the voice on the other end asked. It was a man's voice, but it sounded somewhat distant, almost as if the person was unsure if he had the right number. "This is she," Maye responded, her interest piqued. "Who's calling?" "Hi, Maye, this is David Harrington. I'm with Harrington Automotive Group. We were hoping to speak with you about a potential collaboration, something that could be mutually beneficial. Would you have a few moments?" Maye's mind instantly went to the high-end car dealership that had humiliated her so many weeks ago, and she froze for a moment. Had Elon been speaking to them? She wasn't sure how to feel. The last thing she wanted was to deal with more offers or free cars, especially after everything that had happened. "I'm sorry, David, but I'm not sure I follow," Maye said, her tone cautious but polite. "What exactly are you proposing?" David's voice seemed to grow more animated as he spoke. "Well, Maye, we know you've been an influential voice in fashion and the business world for many years now. We believe there's an exciting opportunity for you to partner with us. We've recently launched a new line of electric vehicles, and we think your image would be the perfect fit to help us promote them. We want to offer you the chance to test drive our latest model, and if you're interested, we'd love to explore a long-term collaboration." Maye felt her stomach tighten. Was this another attempt to buy her attention, to make up for the humiliation she had experienced at the dealership? She didn't know if she wanted to be tied to any further promotions, not after the way they treated her before. Still, she kept her cool. "David, I appreciate the offer, but I'm not sure it's the right fit for me at this time," she said firmly. "I've had some interesting experiences with car companies lately, and I need to make sure that any partnership aligns with my values. I hope you can understand." There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. "I understand completely," David replied, sounding slightly deflated but still hopeful. "If you change your mind, Maye, we'd be thrilled to have you on board. We're willing to go the extra mile to make this work for you. Thank you for your time." Maye ended the call, her mind racing. She wasn't sure if she was relieved or frustrated. The offer had been tempting, especially given the amount of exposure and financial gain it could bring, but it felt like yet another attempt to control her image. She didn't need to be another spokesperson for someone else's brand, and she certainly didn't need to be caught up in a PR stunt designed to fix her public image. As she sat in the hotel room, she began to think about what truly mattered to her. She realized that the offers, the cars, the attention, none of it could compare to her sense of self-worth. She had learned that she was not just someone to be marketed or sold to the highest bidder. She was Maye Musk, and she had earned her place in the world, not by catering to other people's expectations, but by staying true to herself. That night, she sat down to write in her journal, something she hadn't done in years. Writing always helped her process her thoughts, especially when she felt like the world around her was moving too fast. Today was a reminder that no matter how much the world tries to shape you into what they think you should be, you always have the power to decide who you are. I don't need their cars. I don't need their endorsement deals. I don't need to be anyone else but me. She paused and looked at the words she had just written. They resonated deeply. She had already achieved so much, more than most people would in a lifetime. And yet, there was so much more she could do. She wanted to inspire others, especially women, to live their truth, without needing validation from anyone but themselves. But as she closed the journal, there was one lingering thought that refused to leave her mind: Elon. She wanted him to understand that she was proud of him, but that didn't mean she needed to be taken care of. She needed him to see her as the woman she was now, not the one who needed saving. The next day, she called Elon. They needed to talk. "Hi, Elon," she said when he picked up. "I've been thinking about our conversation at the gala. I just want to make sure you understand something." "Of course, Mom. What's on your mind?" Elon's voice was warm and sincere. "I love you," Maye began, "and I'm so proud of everything you've accomplished. But I need you to understand that I don't need the Rolls-Royce, or anything else, to feel loved. What I need is to know that you respect me as an individual, as someone who has spent her life building her own path." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then, Elon spoke softly. "I hear you, Mom. I really do. I just want you to know that I've always looked up to you, and I don't always know how to show it. I guess I thought buying you something big would be the way to make up for the things you didn't get to have." May's heart softened. "Elon, you don't owe me anything. The only thing I want is for you to know that I'm proud of you for everything you've done. But I don't want you to feel like you need to protect me. I'm not fragile. I've got this." "I get it, Mom," Elon said, his voice filled with understanding. "I really do. And I'll respect that moving forward. Thanks for telling me." Maye smiled, feeling the weight lift off her shoulders. It was a moment of clarity, one that would help them both move forward. They didn't need grand gestures. They just needed honesty. Maye awoke the next morning to the bright sunlight streaming through her hotel window. She felt a sense of calm she hadn't experienced in a long time. The conversation with Elon had cleared a lot of the tension that had been building between them. It wasn't about the car or the gestures, it was about the understanding they'd both finally reached. It was as though a silent breakthrough had occurred between mother and son. She knew she wasn't just a passenger in her own life anymore. She was the driver. And this was her journey, one that she had been carving for years, sometimes alone, sometimes with others, but always on her terms. The thought filled her with an almost invigorating sense of freedom. But even though she had that peace of mind, there was still the issue of her public image. The gala had been an incredible step in reclaiming her narrative, but Maye knew that if she wanted to move forward, she needed to take the reins. It wasn't enough to speak on stage and say the right things, she had to show the world what it meant to truly live authentically, and that meant not just with words, but with actions. As she sipped her morning coffee, she went through her messages and emails. The usual batch of business offers, press inquiries, and messages from friends and colleagues filled her inbox. But one email stood out among the rest. It was from a new fashion startup that had been gaining traction, and they were offering Maye the opportunity to be the face of their next campaign. The brand, Elysian, had a mission to combine eco-friendly materials with high-end fashion, creating pieces that were not only stylish but also sustainable. It was exactly the kind of message that resonated with Maye. She had spent years in the fashion industry, working with major designers, but now, as she entered a new phase in her life, she was becoming more selective about the projects she took on. This felt like a perfect fit. Not only did it align with her values, but it also gave her the chance to partner with a brand that had a deeper purpose. Maye quickly responded to the email, agreeing to meet with their creative team. She felt the stirrings of excitement again, a feeling she hadn't experienced since the early days of her modeling career, when everything was fresh and full of possibilities. She was still capable of making an impact. She could still be part of the world that had shaped her, but this time, it would be on her own terms. Later that afternoon, she found herself sitting in a sleek, modern office space with the founders of Elysian, a young couple named Ava and Ben. They were warm, intelligent, and driven, their passion for their brand palpable. Maye immediately felt a connection with them. Their values aligned so closely with hers that the conversation flowed effortlessly. "We've been following your journey, Maye," Ava said with a smile. "And we believe your voice would bring a level of sophistication and authenticity to our brand that we simply couldn't achieve with anyone else." Maye nodded, feeling a surge of gratitude. "Thank you, Ava. I'm honored that you see something in me that aligns with what Elysian stands for. Fashion has always been a way for me to express myself, but now, I also see it as a vehicle for change. We're in a time when what we wear can make a difference. It's not just about looking good, but feeling good in what we wear, knowing it's sustainable and ethical." Ben leaned forward, his eyes bright with enthusiasm. "Exactly. We want to challenge the industry's norms. And we think you're the perfect person to help us do that. We're aiming for a campaign that not only showcases your timeless beauty but also highlights the importance of conscious consumption." Maye felt a sense of alignment with their vision. This wasn't just about her image. This was about making a difference, about pushing for something better in an industry that often prioritized profit over people. She was excited about the opportunity, not just for herself, but for the message it could send to the world. "I'm in," Maye said confidently. "Let's make this happen." The deal was finalized quickly, and Maye's life began to take on a new rhythm. As she prepared for the campaign shoot, she found herself more inspired than ever. She wasn't just the face of the brand, she was a voice for change. She wasn't just participating in the fashion world, she was shifting the conversation about sustainability, ethics, and empowerment. The day of the shoot arrived, and Maye found herself in a minimalist studio filled with natural light, surrounded by sleek pieces made from organic cotton, hemp, and recycled fabrics. The clothes were elegant and modern, but there was something deeply grounded about them. It was as though the fabrics themselves had stories to tell. The photographer, a talented young woman named Mia, instructed Maye to move effortlessly, to let the clothes speak for themselves. Maye had modeled for decades, but this was different. This wasn't about posing for the sake of a paycheck, this was about being seen for who she truly was. As the camera clicked, capturing Maye in various outfits, she couldn't help but reflect on how far she had come. The world once saw her as a pretty face, a young model on the rise. But now, she was more than that. She was a symbol of resilience, of reinvention, and of living life with purpose. During a break in the shoot, Maye sat on a chair, her mind racing with thoughts of what this new phase of her life would bring. She had spent so much time in the past trying to prove herself to others, seeking validation and recognition. But now, at this moment, she realized she didn't need to prove anything. The world would see her for who she truly was, a woman who had lived a life of depth and experience, who had fought her battles and emerged stronger. The shoot wrapped up late in the afternoon, and Maye felt a profound sense of satisfaction. The work she had just done felt meaningful. For the first time in a long time, she felt as though she wasn't just occupying space in the world, she was making it better. As she left the studio, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Elon. "Mom, I just saw the news about your partnership with Elysian. That's incredible. I'm really proud of you." Maye smiled as she read the message. She hadn't expected that kind of reaction from him, but it warmed her heart. Elon had always been supportive, even when it was difficult to understand her choices. This was the validation she had longed for, not from the world, but from the people who mattered most. As she typed a reply, she realized something that made her smile even wider. She had reached a place where she no longer needed validation to feel complete. She was doing this for herself, not for anyone else. "Thank you, Elon. I'm proud of you too. Always." The weeks that followed Maye's partnership with Elysian were transformative. The campaign went viral, not just because of her high-profile status, but because it resonated with something deeper, something the world had been waiting for. The fusion of fashion and sustainability, combined with Maye's authentic presence, struck a chord with audiences everywhere. People admired her not just as a model, but as an advocate for change. She'd once been the young woman breaking into the industry, trying to fit into the mold set by others. Now, she was at the forefront of a new conversation, a conversation about how we could all be more mindful of our choices, not just in the things we buy, but in how we live our lives. Her days became filled with interviews, events, and speaking engagements. The phone calls from major brands came pouring in, but Maye was more selective than ever. This time, it wasn't about the biggest paycheck or the most glamorous campaign. It was about choosing projects that aligned with her values, projects that told the stories she wanted to tell. One afternoon, as Maye sat in her office overlooking the city, she found herself lost in thought. She'd built a career for decades in the public eye, but this was different. It was deeper. It was about using her platform to make a difference, to leave behind a legacy that wasn't just tied to beauty or fame, but to integrity and purpose. Her phone buzzed, pulling her from her reverie. It was a text message from her best friend, Catherine. "Can you believe it? The Elysian campaign is trending worldwide. I saw your ad in London last night. People are seriously talking about how you're redefining what it means to be beautiful." Maye chuckled softly to herself. Redefining beauty. That phrase had been used so often in the industry, but it had never felt more real than it did now. She wasn't just about physical appearance, she was about authenticity, about living in alignment with one's values. She quickly typed a response, "It's overwhelming, but in the best way possible. I just want to keep doing more for myself, more for the world." The phone buzzed again almost immediately. "I get it. I've always known you had this kind of power, but now you're showing the world. Don't forget to take a moment to enjoy it. You've earned this." The words hit her in a way she hadn't expected. She had been so focused on moving forward, on being more, doing more, that she hadn't paused to truly savor how far she'd come. Catherine was right. She had earned it. The journey had been long, with countless challenges, but she had made it. Later that evening, Maye took a quiet walk along the streets near her hotel, the cool air against her skin. Her mind buzzed with possibilities, but she felt a profound sense of peace. She had found something that eluded her for so long, a sense of purpose that was all her own. In the quiet of the night, Maye allowed herself to truly reflect on how much had changed. The woman who had once sought validation from others was no longer the same person. The glamorous car dealerships, the endless cycle of high-profile campaigns, and the world that had once seemed like a never-ending race, none of it mattered anymore. It was about standing tall in her own skin and knowing she was doing something meaningful with her time. The phone buzzed in her pocket once more, interrupting her thoughts. It was a message from Elon. "Mom, I've been thinking a lot about everything lately. You've always been the one to remind me that life isn't about seeking approval from others, but I've realized I've been doing the same thing for far too long. I want to focus on my own journey, not based on what people expect from me, but what I truly want. I just wanted to say thank you for showing me what it really means to live authentically." Tears welled up in May's eyes as she read the message. The mother-son dynamic had always been strong, but in that moment, it felt as though they had both come full circle, understanding the deeper layers of each other, and of themselves. She quickly typed back. Elon, you're more than capable of forging your own path. You always have been. And no matter what you choose, I'll always be proud of you. We're both learning and growing together. She paused, smiling softly to herself, before hitting send. As the message left her phone and flew into the digital ether, she realized that she was no longer just the mother of a tech billionaire. She was Maye Musk, a woman who had overcome every obstacle thrown her way, and now she was a symbol of reinvention. As the days turned into weeks, Maye found herself increasingly drawn to the idea of speaking out more about the importance of self-empowerment, particularly for women. She wanted to hold forums, create workshops, and give talks that encouraged others, especially younger women, to break free from societal pressures and step into their true power. Her schedule had become a whirlwind. Yet, with each opportunity to speak or appear in public, she felt more grounded than ever. There was a fire within her, a belief that the world could be better if people just embraced who they were. Authenticity. It was as simple as that. She began to reflect on her own story, how she had started out as a young woman, a mother trying to make ends meet, trying to fit into a world that didn't always welcome her. And now, here she was, not only thriving in a world that had once judged her, but also paving the way for others to do the same. Through all the success and recognition, Maye never lost sight of the core lesson she had learned: the power of reinvention was not in changing who you were, but in becoming who you were always meant to be. And in that, she found her peace. One afternoon, while meeting with a few young entrepreneurs, Maye received a call that made her heart skip a beat. It was from a company she had admired for years, one that had reached out to her for a major speaking engagement. They wanted her to headline a global conference on the future of women in business. Her response was immediate, her voice steady and resolute. Yes. I'm in. It wasn't just a career milestone. It was another step in her journey toward becoming the voice of change, the voice that would show the world the true power of authenticity. Maye Musk was ready for the next chapter. The day of the conference arrived, and Maye felt a sense of anticipation that she hadn't experienced in a while. Her team had prepared everything meticulously, from her speech to her wardrobe, but today was different. This wasn't just another event where she was expected to be a presence. This was a moment where she would speak directly to a global audience, not just about the fashion industry or sustainability, but about something far more personal: empowerment, reinvention, and the courage to live authentically. The event was being held in a grand convention center in New York City, a place where some of the world's most influential thought leaders had spoken. The room was filled with women, some just starting out in their careers, others already established in their fields, but all eager to hear the wisdom of those who had paved the way. The stage was set, the lights dimmed, and Maye was ready. As she walked backstage, the familiar feeling of nervousness crept up on her, but this time, it wasn't the same kind of nervousness she'd felt when she was younger. It was a quiet kind of excitement, a readiness to step into her role not just as a model, but as a leader, a mentor, and a force for change. Her assistant, Anna, looked at her with a reassuring smile. "You've got this, Maye. They're waiting for you." Maye nodded, taking a deep breath. She'd been through countless runways, photo shoots, and interviews, but this was different. This was her chance to leave a lasting impact, to inspire others to find their own strength and voice. This was where she could show the world what it really meant to reinvent yourself, to never stop growing, no matter where life had taken you. As the curtain lifted, she walked onto the stage, greeted by the warm applause of the audience. The spotlight hit her, and for a moment, she felt a surge of connection with the crowd. She wasn't just speaking to them, she was sharing her journey, her truth. And in return, she felt their energy, their excitement to hear from someone who had lived it. She adjusted the microphone, looking out at the sea of faces. She knew that these women had their own stories of struggles and triumphs, just like her. And in that moment, she understood her role in their lives. She wasn't there to teach them anything, they already knew how to fight. She was there to remind them that it was okay to fight for what they truly wanted, to remind them that they were worthy of all the dreams they had buried for so long. "Good morning, everyone," Maye began, her voice steady but warm. "It's an honor to be here today, to stand in front of so many incredible women who are pushing boundaries and shattering ceilings in their own lives and careers." The crowd responded with applause, and Maye felt a sense of unity wash over her. "I've spent a lifetime in the spotlight, first as a model, then as a mother, and now as an advocate for sustainability and change. But through it all, one thing has remained constant: the journey is never linear. Life has a way of throwing obstacles in your path, of challenging you in ways you never expected. But what matters most is how you respond. Do you stay stuck in fear, or do you rise above it?" She paused, letting the words sink in. "For many years, I was caught up in trying to be everything for everyone. I wanted to fit into the mold that the world told me I should fit into. But over time, I realized that I wasn't here to conform, I was here to create. To show the world that it's never too late to change, to reinvent yourself, to be unapologetically you." The crowd fell silent, hanging on every word. Maye knew she had their attention. She had spent years conforming to an ideal, thinking that was the only way to succeed. But now, she had the freedom to speak her truth, to show others that they didn't have to live by someone else's rules. "Authenticity isn't something you can fake," she continued. "It's something you have to find within yourself, no matter how old you are, no matter what you've been through. I'm here today not because I have all the answers, but because I have lived the questions. I've failed, I've stumbled, but each time, I got back up. And that's what you need to do. Get back up." The crowd erupted in applause, and Maye felt a swell of pride. She had come so far, and it felt good to stand in front of these women and share her story. But more than that, it felt right. "I want to leave you with this," Maye said, her voice softening. "It's easy to get lost in the noise of the world. To let other people define your worth. But the truth is, your worth is yours to define. And that definition doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be yours. So I challenge you all, today, to start defining your own story. The one that is true to who you are." The applause grew louder, and for the first time in a long while, Maye felt like she was exactly where she needed to be. She wasn't just speaking to a crowd, she was speaking to herself. She was reminding herself of the power she had, the power we all have, to choose our path, to redefine our narrative. As the speech came to an end, Maye stood at the podium, basking in the warmth of the crowd's response. This wasn't just about her. It was about every woman in that room, every person who had ever felt lost or unworthy. She had been through it all, and now she was giving them the courage to do the same. When the event ended, Maye was greeted by people who wanted to thank her for her words. Some were in tears, others simply hugged her, their gratitude palpable. She could see the change in their eyes, the shift that had occurred because someone had reminded them that they were enough, just as they were. As the evening came to a close, Maye found herself reflecting on the day's events. She had given everything in that speech, and in return, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. It wasn't the applause, the media coverage, or even the glowing reviews, it was the sense that she had touched lives, that she had made a real impact. She thought about Elon's message earlier that day. She had given him the advice to forge his own path, but in reality, she had been speaking to herself too. This was her path. This was her moment. And she wasn't going to let anything or anyone take that away from her. As she left the conference hall, her phone buzzed again. It was Elon. "Mom, you were incredible today. I think the world needs more of you, more of your authenticity. I'm so proud of you." Maye smiled, feeling a sense of peace. She was exactly where she needed to be, and for the first time in a long time, she realized that she was not just proud of the woman she had become, but proud of the journey she had taken to get here. The weeks following Maye's speech at the global conference were a blur of media appearances, interviews, and more speaking engagements. The response to her message of authenticity and self-empowerment had been overwhelming, and the world seemed to be taking notice. It wasn't just the fashion world or her fans who were applauding her message, it was women from all walks of life, from every corner of the globe, who were drawn to her story and the way she had reinvented herself. Maye had always known that her platform could be used for something greater than just modeling, but now, she was beginning to see just how far her influence could reach. She wasn't just the mother of Elon Musk or a successful businesswoman, she was becoming a symbol of reinvention, a beacon for those who believed it was too late to change their lives. But as much as the recognition felt gratifying, Maye couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. There was an itch she hadn't yet scratched, a dream she hadn't fully realized. She had built a career that was both glamorous and impactful, but what about her personal journey? What about the parts of her life that had been left behind in the whirlwind of success? One quiet evening, Maye sat in her penthouse apartment overlooking the city. The lights of the skyline twinkled in the distance, and for a moment, she was lost in the calm. She picked up her phone and scrolled through her emails, as she often did at night. Then, she saw something that made her pause, a message from an old friend, Rachel, who had known Maye back in her early modeling days. "Maye, I've been following your journey, and I'm so inspired by everything you're doing. But I want to ask you something, have you ever thought about writing a book? About your life, your experiences, the lessons you've learned. I think the world would be moved by your story. Think about it." Rachel. The words sat on the screen for a long time. Maye had never really considered writing a book before. She had always been more comfortable in front of the camera or behind a podium, not behind a desk with a pen in hand. But as she thought about Rachel's words, something stirred inside her. Perhaps this was the next step, the next horizon she needed to reach. The idea of sharing her full story, of taking people on a journey through her struggles, triumphs, and reinventions, felt daunting. But it also felt right. It would be more than just a memoir, it would be a guide, a testament to the power of self-transformation, and a celebration of the moments that defined her. Maye set the phone down and stared out at the city. The wind blew gently through the open windows, carrying with it the promise of something new. She had built so much of her life around external success, now, it was time to build something for herself. She called her assistant, Anna, the next morning. "Anna, I think I want to write a book," Maye said, her voice steady but filled with conviction. "I want to share my story, not just as a model or an influencer, but as a woman who has reinvented herself at every stage of life." Anna was silent for a moment. "Maye, that's incredible. I think the world would be eager to hear your story. Let's start by getting you connected with a few publishers. We'll make this happen." As the conversation continued, Maye's excitement grew. Writing a book wasn't just a career move, it was a personal challenge, a way to reflect on everything she had been through and give others the courage to pursue their own reinvention. It wasn't just about the accolades or the fame anymore. It was about creating something lasting, something that could help others see the power of their own potential. Over the next few weeks, Maye worked tirelessly on her manuscript. She was up early every morning, pouring her heart out onto the pages. She wrote about her early years, the struggles she faced as a young mother, the challenges of breaking into a competitive industry, and the sacrifices she had made along the way. But she also wrote about the moments of clarity, when she realized she didn't have to live by other people's standards, when she understood that reinvention wasn't about changing who you were, but about becoming who you were always meant to be. She shared stories of her children, how they had been a constant source of love and inspiration in her life, even when the world seemed to be at odds with her. She wrote about the times she felt defeated, the times she felt like giving up, and the lessons she had learned from every setback. And most importantly, she wrote about the freedom she had found in being her true self, in embracing her age, her journey, and her imperfections. Writing her story felt like an act of reclamation, a way to take ownership of the narrative that had once been shaped by others. It wasn't always easy, there were moments of doubt and vulnerability, but as she wrote, she felt a sense of liberation. This was her voice, her truth. One afternoon, while reviewing her manuscript, Maye received a phone call from her son, Elon. His voice came through the speaker, filled with warmth and excitement. "Mom, I've been thinking a lot about what you said in your speech at the conference," he began. "About living authentically. You've inspired me to do the same in my own life. I've been working on something that I think you'll be proud of, a new initiative to make sustainability more accessible for everyday people. I'm calling it Greenlight. It's going to be a big project, but I want you to be a part of it. I need your voice." Maye smiled, her heart swelling with pride. Elon had always been driven, but this felt different. This was a cause that aligned with everything she had been advocating for: sustainability, change, and the courage to act on your beliefs. "I'm in, Elon," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "You've always known how to make an impact, and I'm so proud of the work you're doing. Let's make it happen." As the conversation ended, Maye felt a renewed sense of purpose. The world was changing, and she was right in the middle of it, not just watching from the sidelines but actively participating. Greenlight would be another step in her mission to use her platform for good, and she couldn't wait to see where it would take her. That evening, as she looked over her manuscript once again, Maye felt a sense of peace. She had found her new horizon, her new calling. Writing the book was just the beginning. There were so many more chapters to her story, and she was ready to turn the page. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The buzz around Maye's upcoming book continued to grow, but she wasn't the type to bask in the spotlight for too long. The wheels of her next big project, the Greenlight Initiative, were spinning, and she was now deeply involved in her son's ambitious endeavor. Elon's idea was nothing short of revolutionary, a platform that made sustainable, eco-friendly technologies more affordable and accessible for everyday people. It was everything Maye had been advocating for, and now, with her involvement, it seemed like the world was finally starting to listen. One crisp autumn morning, Maye found herself sitting at a round table with Elon, his team, and a handful of investors. They were discussing the vision behind Greenlight, with Elon passionately outlining the potential impact. He spoke about solar panels, electric cars, zero-waste packaging, and sustainable agriculture, all powered by the platform they were building. But it wasn't just about the products. Elon's vision was about changing the mindset of consumers, about empowering them to make more sustainable choices without feeling like they had to sacrifice convenience or quality. Maye sat back and listened, admiring the clarity of Elon's ideas. He had always been a dreamer, but now, his dreams were about to change the world. She could feel the energy in the room. This was going to be huge. "Mom, you've been in the public eye for decades," Elon said, turning to her. "Your voice can make Greenlight more than just another tech initiative. It can make it a movement. We need your help in getting the word out." Maye's heart swelled with pride as she looked at her son. He had always been a visionary, but this felt different. He wasn't just innovating for profit, he was changing the narrative, shifting the way people thought about sustainability. This was something Maye could wholeheartedly get behind. "I'm in," she said with conviction. "If there's one thing I've learned over the years, it's that people don't just need to hear about change, they need to see it in action. Let's show them how easy it can be to live more sustainably." The team nodded in agreement, and with that, Maye's role in Greenlight began to take shape. She wasn't just an advisor or a spokeswoman, she was a key player in making the initiative as impactful as possible. Her first-hand experience in the fashion world, where sustainability was an ongoing challenge, gave her unique insights into how to make green living accessible. She began working with Elon's team on strategies to incorporate eco-friendly materials in everyday products, from clothing to home goods. She also began drafting a speech to kick off the Greenlight campaign, a speech that would marry her personal journey of reinvention with the world-changing potential of the platform. In the midst of all this, Maye continued to work on her book. She had a clear vision now. It wasn't just about recounting her personal story. It was about inspiring others to take control of their own journeys, to show them that it wasn't too late to change, to grow, to find new purpose. She wrote about her years in the modeling industry, the lessons she had learned as a mother, and the evolution of her mindset. But she also wrote about the way she saw the world now, one that needed more than just individual reinvention. It needed collective action. As the book neared completion, May began to reflect on how far she had come. Her life had been a series of unexpected twists and turns, times when she had been on top of the world, and times when she had felt utterly lost. But through it all, she had learned that no matter where you started, it was where you chose to go that mattered. Her story wasn't just about the successes or the accolades, it was about resilience. It was about embracing change, embracing discomfort, and embracing the unknown. And, most importantly, it was about understanding that no matter how old you were, you could always take a step forward. One evening, after a particularly long day of meetings and phone calls, May sat alone in her study, reviewing the final draft of her book. She read through the pages, pausing at moments that still made her emotional, moments when she realized just how much she had overcome. As she reached the final chapter, she felt a sense of peace. This book was her legacy. It wasn't just a collection of stories or lessons, it was a guide for anyone who had ever felt stuck, anyone who had ever questioned their worth or their potential. It was a testament to the power of reinvention. Suddenly, her phone buzzed with a message from Elon. "Mom, I think you'll like this." The text was accompanied by a video link. Curious, she clicked on it, and her eyes widened as she watched the footage. It was a sneak peek of the first Greenlight ad campaign, featuring a new line of sustainable clothing made from eco-friendly materials. The ad was sleek, modern, and filled with energy. Elon's company had partnered with top designers to create a line that was both cutting-edge and environmentally responsible. The ad was set against the backdrop of a bustling city, showcasing people from all walks of life effortlessly wearing the clothes, living sustainably without compromising style. The last shot in the video showed May herself, stepping out of a sleek, electric car and into a crowd of people who were all wearing the new line. Her face was radiant, her confidence undeniable. It was a moment that embodied everything Greenlight stood for: effortless, accessible, and real. May watched the video again, this time with tears in her eyes. She hadn't expected to see herself in such a prominent role. It felt like a culmination of everything she had worked for, a blending of her passions for fashion, sustainability, and personal reinvention. She quickly typed a response to Elon: "You're right. I love it. This is exactly what I envisioned. Let's change the world." As the weeks passed, May's role in Greenlight grew even more prominent. She became the face of the campaign, traveling to cities around the world to speak about sustainability, to inspire others to live greener lives, and to encourage people to support the initiative. Everywhere she went, she saw the spark in people's eyes, the desire to do something better, to be part of something bigger than themselves. And with every event, every speech, every campaign, May could feel the shift happening. She was no longer just an icon of reinvention, she was a catalyst for change. Through her story, her voice, and her efforts, she was helping people realize that it was never too late to live the life they had always dreamed of. One evening, after returning from an event in Los Angeles, May sat alone in her apartment, reflecting on everything that had happened. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, about the woman she had become, and about the legacy she was now building, not just for herself, but for future generations. She picked up her phone, typing a message to Elon: "Thank you for believing in me, for helping me find my true purpose. Together, we're going to change the world." She hit send and smiled. Maye Musk had truly found her calling, and the world was just beginning to take notice. As the months passed, May's life continued to expand in ways she never could have imagined. Her role in the Greenlight initiative had grown exponentially. She was not only serving as the face of the campaign but also as one of its most outspoken advocates. Traveling the world, speaking at high-profile events, and appearing on major media outlets, May's message of sustainability and reinvention was reaching millions. However, with this new level of visibility came a new set of challenges, ones she hadn't anticipated. Behind the polished exterior of her public persona, doubt started to creep in. The pressure of maintaining such an image, of constantly being on, began to weigh heavily on her. She had built a life based on authenticity, but lately, it felt like she was living a life that was too carefully curated. One evening, after a particularly exhausting week of interviews and appearances, Maye found herself at home in her penthouse, staring out over the city skyline. The lights twinkled in the distance, but her mind felt far from peaceful. The room was quiet, save for the soft hum of the city below. She had just wrapped up another conference call, discussing her next big appearance in Paris. Everyone around her was so invested in her role as the face of Greenlight, but in that moment, Maye couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. Was this really her true self? Or had she become just another brand, another person selling an idea? She had always prided herself on being real, on being the woman who didn't hide behind a mask. But now, she was starting to wonder, was she being true to herself, or was she just playing a part in a much larger narrative? Her phone buzzed, snapping her out of her thoughts. It was a message from her daughter, Tosca, who had been an anchor of support through it all. "Mom, I can see you're overwhelmed. Let's grab lunch tomorrow. I think we both need to take a step back and catch up. You've been so focused on Greenlight and everything else that I don't think you've had a chance to just be Maye. Let's make tomorrow about you, okay?" Maye smiled softly, feeling a rush of gratitude for her daughter's insight. Tosca had always been the person who could see through the layers, the one who knew exactly when Maye needed a moment of clarity. The next day, Maye and Tosca met at their favorite cafe in downtown Los Angeles, a cozy spot where they could escape the hustle and bustle of the outside world. They sat in a quiet corner, sipping tea and sharing a simple meal. Tosca, ever perceptive, immediately sensed that something was off. "Mom," Tosca said gently, "I know what's going on. You've been carrying the weight of this entire movement on your shoulders. Greenlight is important, but it's not everything. You need to remember who you are, not just who you've become to the world." Maye sighed, running a hand through her hair. "I don't know anymore, Tosca. I feel like I'm being pulled in so many directions. Everyone expects me to be this icon of reinvention and sustainability, but sometimes I don't know if it's really me. I've spent so much time focusing on this project, on being this person, that I've lost sight of what I truly want." Tosca reached across the table and took her mother's hand. "It's okay to step back. You don't have to be everything to everyone. You've always been a strong, independent woman, but that doesn't mean you have to carry the whole world on your shoulders. What's truly important is that you stay true to yourself. Greenlight is amazing, but it's your heart, your story, that people connect with. Don't lose that." Maye looked into her daughter's eyes and felt a wave of relief wash over her. Tosca was right. She had gotten so caught up in the whirlwind of success and public perception that she had forgotten the core of who she was. She wasn't just a spokesperson or an influencer, she was a woman who had lived through decades of challenges, triumphs, and transformations. "I've been so focused on the next step, the next big thing," Maye admitted. "I've been trying so hard to make an impact, to live up to the expectations others have for me. But I've neglected my own needs, my own desires. I need to rediscover what makes me, me." Tosca smiled warmly. "And you will, Mom. You've reinvented yourself before. You'll do it again. But this time, make sure it's for you, not just for everyone else." The conversation with Tosca lingered in Maye's mind long after they parted ways. For the first time in a while, she allowed herself to breathe. She was more than just a figurehead for an initiative. She was a woman with dreams, with passions, with a story that was still unfolding. The pressure to maintain an image had clouded her vision, but now, she saw a clearer path ahead. That evening, Maye returned home with a newfound sense of clarity. She sat at her desk and stared at the unfinished pages of her manuscript, the words no longer feeling like an obligation but a way to reconnect with herself. She took a deep breath, grabbed her pen, and began to write again, this time, not for the world, but for herself. The words flowed effortlessly as she wrote about the importance of self-care, of taking time to step back and reflect, of the power in embracing the unknown. She shared her struggles with doubt, with the pressure to constantly perform, and how she had learned to let go of perfection. This chapter was different from the others. It was raw, vulnerable, and honest. It was a reminder to herself that reinvention wasn't just about achieving success, it was about understanding and honoring one's true self. As May continued to write, she began to feel a sense of liberation. She wasn't just writing a book for others anymore, she was writing her own story, reclaiming her narrative. For the first time in a long while, she felt the weight of the world lifting off her shoulders. Maye Musk had always been a symbol of strength, resilience, and reinvention. But now, she was ready to embrace a new chapter of her life, a chapter where the most important person to reinvent was herself. May had always prided herself on embracing change. After all, she'd spent her entire life navigating the unpredictable tides of the fashion world, raising 3 children, and consistently finding ways to adapt to new opportunities. Whether it was conquering the world of modeling in her youth, shifting to acting, or later becoming an influential figure in the sustainability movement, May had reinvented herself time and time again. But now, as she sat in her living room, surrounded by pages of her book and the latest greenlight plans, she felt a strange sense of hesitation creeping in. For the first time in years, she found herself questioning what reinvention even meant. Was it always about external success and recognition? Or was it more about internal growth and fulfillment? It had been a week since her heart-to-heart with Tosca, and though she had made some progress in embracing her need for personal reflection, the weight of the decisions she had to make next was immense. May was no longer just a model or spokesperson, she was a mother, an author, and a key player in a global movement. But something inside her had shifted. After all the talk of transformation, sustainability, and progress, she realized that maybe it was time for her to focus on the one thing she had neglected the most, herself. As she thought about her future, she found herself grappling with a familiar tug-of-war. On one hand, there was the Greenlight Initiative, which was blossoming into a global force. Elon and the team were pushing forward, and she was fully invested in spreading the message of environmental consciousness and ethical living. She had even begun to envision future collaborations with big brands that shared the same ethos. On the other hand, there was her personal life, a quieter, less public-facing part of her existence that she had overlooked in her pursuit of changing the world. The challenge now was reconciling these two identities, the public figure May who was leading a movement, and the private woman who wanted to rediscover who she was when the cameras were off. After much deliberation, May made the decision to take a brief pause from the constant whirlwind of speaking engagements and media appearances. She informed her team that she would be taking a short sabbatical. Elon, of course, understood and fully supported her decision. The first few days were blissfully quiet. She spent her mornings meditating and her afternoons working on her book. But by the end of the week, May realized something important. She wasn't just looking to rest, she was looking to reignite something inside herself. Something had been missing, but it wasn't just her work, it was her sense of adventure, the deep curiosity that had once driven her to explore new things without fear. One morning, after several days of deep reflection, she woke up with a plan. She would embark on a journey, not a physical one, but an emotional one. She would return to some of the places that had shaped her, reconnect with the people who had helped her grow, and tap back into the passions she had once loved but now rarely had time for. Her first stop was a small gallery in New York City. Art had always been a huge part of her life, but she had long neglected it in favor of her more pressing responsibilities. She wanted to immerse herself in creativity once again, not for a project or a cause, but for pure joy. She spent the afternoon wandering through the gallery, taking in the colors, textures, and stories that the paintings told. It was the first time in months that May felt truly present, and she realized how much she had missed being in touch with her artistic side. The next part of her journey took her to a vineyard in Napa Valley, where she spent a few days reconnecting with an old friend, a winemaker named Caroline. Caroline had been a mentor to May during her younger years, encouraging her to step outside of her comfort zone and experiment with different careers and passions. Over a glass of wine, the two women reminisced about old times, talking about everything from Maye's modeling days to the evolution of their lives. "Do you remember when you first started with the modeling agencies, Maye?" Caroline asked, her eyes sparkling with nostalgia. Maye chuckled. "I was terrified. I had no idea what I was doing. But you pushed me to take that leap, and I've never looked back." Caroline smiled. "Sometimes, that's all we need, a little push. But now, it's about what you need. What do you want, Maye?" The question hit her harder than she expected. What did she want? For so long, her life had been dictated by what others needed from her. It was time to put herself first, to listen to that inner voice that had been silenced for so long. She spent the next few days at the vineyard in peaceful solitude, reflecting on her journey. She realized that in her pursuit of helping others, she had neglected the importance of nurturing her own soul. It wasn't just about changing the world anymore, it was about finding balance within herself. When Maye returned to Los Angeles, she felt like a new person. The tension that had been building inside her for months had dissipated, replaced by a renewed sense of clarity and purpose. She was ready to dive back into her work, but this time, with a new perspective. The work was important, but it wasn't everything. Her own well-being, her happiness, her own sense of fulfillment, those were just as vital. Back in her study, she looked at her manuscript once more. She had written so much about reinvention, about facing challenges, and about the power of transformation. But now, she wanted to share something more personal. She would write about the importance of self-care, of quiet moments, of reclaiming joy in the chaos. Maye had always been known for her resilience, but now, she would show the world that reinvention wasn't just about taking on new challenges, it was about honoring who you are in the moment and taking the time to truly live. With a newfound sense of peace, Maye Musk took the pen in her hand again. She was ready to inspire others, but more importantly, she was ready to inspire herself. Maye woke up early the next morning, the sun just beginning to rise over the Los Angeles skyline. The city below, often so noisy and chaotic, was now a quiet canvas bathed in soft light. For the first time in weeks, she felt a profound sense of calm. It was as though the emotional fog that had clouded her for so long had finally lifted. She felt lighter, more at peace with herself and the choices she had made. She spent the morning alone, sipping her coffee in the living room, enjoying the silence. It felt luxurious, a rarity in her fast-paced world. The past few days had been a revelation, a much-needed reminder that taking time for herself was just as important as the work she did for others. She had learned to slow down and savor these moments of stillness, to appreciate the beauty of the present without rushing to the next big thing. As Maye reflected on her journey, she realized something important. Reinvention was not just about change, it was about embracing every version of herself, even the ones that felt imperfect or uncertain. The journey wasn't about becoming someone else, it was about reconnecting with who she truly was. After several days of quiet reflection, Maye decided it was time to return to work, but with a renewed sense of purpose. She had spent enough time seeking external validation and had found peace within herself. Now, it was time to refocus on her passions, both personal and professional. She knew her work with Greenlight was far from over, but she was determined to approach it with a fresh perspective. She began drafting ideas for her next big project, one that would be more personal than anything she had done before. She wanted to create a new initiative, something that would blend her passion for sustainability with her desire to help others find their own paths to reinvention. Maye envisioned a series of workshops and retreats focused on self-discovery and growth, where individuals could come together to share their stories, reflect on their lives, and work towards personal transformation. She would bring in experts, life coaches, and fellow advocates for sustainability to guide the participants on their journey. It would be a space where people could learn, grow, and take the first step towards their own reinvention, just as she had done. With this new vision in mind, she immediately set up a meeting with Elon to discuss the project. He had been incredibly supportive throughout her journey and would be key to the success of this new endeavor. As they sat in the sleek, modern office space at Greenlight, May laid out her ideas for the new initiative. "I've been thinking a lot about where I want to go from here," May began, her voice steady and clear. "I've spent so much time helping others reinvent themselves through Greenlight, but now I want to focus on reinvention in a more personal way, one that connects people to the very core of who they are. I want to create spaces where people can explore what truly drives them, where they can grow, and where they can learn to reinvent their lives in a meaningful, sustainable way." Elon listened intently, his hands folded on the table. "I love the idea. It's in line with everything Greenlight stands for. Sustainability is not just about the planet, it's about personal growth, too. If we're going to transform the world, we need to start by transforming ourselves." May smiled, feeling a surge of gratitude. Elon always saw the bigger picture, and he recognized the power of her ideas. "Exactly. I want to create a program that teaches people how to embrace change, how to be resilient in the face of challenges, and how to connect with their true selves. The world needs more than just products or messages about sustainability, it needs a shift in mindset." They spent the next hour brainstorming ideas, fine-tuning the details of the program. May was invigorated by the conversation. It felt good to be back, to have a clear direction, and to know that she was still part of something much larger than herself. She wasn't just promoting a cause, she was creating an experience, a space for growth, for both herself and for others. After the meeting, May felt energized, but there was still one more piece of her life she needed to address: her family. Throughout all the changes, the whirlwind of public appearances, and the excitement of her new projects, she had neglected some of the most important relationships in her life: her children. She decided to reach out to them, inviting them to join her for a weekend retreat at her house in Malibu. She knew how important it was to connect with them, to remind them that no matter how busy her life had become, they were her top priority. The weekend arrived, and May's house was filled with the laughter of her children and grandchildren. They spent their days cooking together, walking along the beach, and sharing stories about their lives. It was a reminder for May that no amount of success could replace the love and support of her family. She realized that her reinvention wasn't just about her own growth, it was about nurturing the relationships that mattered most. As the weekend came to a close, May felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had learned that true success was about balance, about finding harmony between personal growth and meaningful connections. It was about evolving in ways that honored who you were and who you wanted to become, without losing sight of what truly mattered. With her vision for the new initiative in place and her family by her side, May was ready to move forward with a renewed sense of purpose. She knew that the road ahead would be filled with challenges, but she was ready to face them head-on. After all, reinvention was not a one-time event, it was a lifelong journey. Maye Musk had always been known for her strength, resilience, and ability to reinvent herself. But now, she was ready to inspire others to do the same, to show them that the power to change and grow was within each of them. And as she looked out over the Pacific Ocean that evening, she couldn't help but feel hopeful for what the future held. Maye Musk's decision to pause, reflect, and reconnect had already begun to make waves in her life. The clarity she had gained during her personal journey was now spilling over into her professional endeavors, and the impact was undeniable. The Greenlight initiative, which she had helped shape into a global movement, was thriving, but now it was evolving into something even more profound. The idea of reinvention, both personal and environmental, was beginning to resonate with more people than ever before. Over the next few weeks, May continued to refine her idea for the personal growth initiative, the one that would merge her expertise in sustainability with her desire to help people reconnect with their true selves. She had begun reaching out to potential partners, including wellness experts, psychologists, and environmental leaders, to help bring her vision to life. One afternoon, May sat down in a spacious conference room with her team at Greenlight to finalize the details of the upcoming project. Elon had been incredibly supportive of her idea, and now it was time to gather the logistics to make it happen. "Okay, let's break it down," May began, her voice steady with newfound confidence. "I want this to be more than just a series of workshops. I want this to be a transformative experience. We're going to create a platform that not only teaches people about sustainability but helps them make real changes in their personal lives. This isn't just about educating people, it's about helping them rediscover themselves, their purpose, and how they fit into this world. Her team nodded, clearly inspired by her vision. How do you see us approaching this? One of the members asked. What's the first step? I think we need to start by gathering the right people. We're going to need life coaches, mindfulness experts, environmentalists, and maybe even a few celebrity advocates who can speak to the importance of reinvention in their own lives. We want this to feel like a community. A safe space for people to share, grow, and learn from each other. And how do we integrate the environmental aspect? Another member chimed in. By showing people that sustainability isn't just about the planet, it's about sustainable living. It's about making choices that support long-term happiness, mental health, and well-being, Maye explained, leaning forward, her passion evident. We'll incorporate mindfulness practices, journaling, and even sustainable lifestyle workshops. But we'll also focus on giving participants the tools to make those changes in their personal lives, not just their homes. True sustainability comes from within. The team buzzed with excitement as Maye continued outlining the program. Ideas flowed freely as they brainstormed content for the retreats and workshops. They discussed everything from integrating outdoor activities that connected people to nature, to hosting interactive panels where experts would address the psychological aspects of change. Elon was present for much of the meeting, offering his thoughts and strategic advice. I think this is going to be huge, Maye. This is more than just a brand. You're creating a movement that blends personal transformation with sustainability. You're not just asking people to change their habits, you're helping them transform their lives. Maye smiled, feeling more certain than ever that this was the right path. She could feel the energy shifting around her, the excitement of something new taking root. I think we're onto something big, she said. But it's going to take time. We'll start small, maybe with a few pilot programs and workshops, and build from there. As the meeting concluded, Maye felt a sense of pride and excitement bubble up inside her. She had spent her entire life reinventing herself, and now she was ready to guide others through their own journeys of change. But more than that, she was building something that was about much more than personal gain. It was about creating a ripple effect, where every person she helped would, in turn, help others. It was about creating a community of transformation, one that was sustainable in every sense of the word. As the days went by, the project began to take shape. Maye traveled to different locations, meeting with wellness experts, environmental activists, and life coaches. She carefully curated a team that reflected her values, people who were as passionate about personal growth as they were about sustainability. The partnerships she formed were built on mutual respect and a shared vision for a better, more conscious world. The first retreat, which would be held in the serene hills of Santa Barbara, was set for the following month. The idea was to create a holistic experience that blended deep reflection with practical tools for reinvention. Maye had handpicked every detail, from the workshops to the meals. She wanted the participants to leave feeling not just educated, but transformed, equipped to carry the lessons of sustainability and personal growth into their daily lives. But as the retreat date drew nearer, Maye faced a challenge that she had not anticipated. The personal doubts she had worked so hard to overcome began to resurface. What if people didn't connect with her message? What if the retreat didn't have the impact she was hoping for? Would she be able to deliver on the promises she had made to her team and the participants? It was on one of these sleepless nights, when anxiety crept in, that Maye received a message from Tosca. It was simple but timely. You've got this, Mom. You're doing this for the right reasons. Just remember why you started. You're not doing this to please anyone. You're doing it because you believe in it. And because you believe in yourself. Maye smiled softly at the words, feeling the weight of her daughter's encouragement lift her spirits. She had always been the one to support others, to push them to be their best selves. But in this moment, she realized that it was okay to lean on her family for support, too. The retreat arrived, and Maye stood at the entrance of the venue, looking out over the sprawling hills. The first group of participants was beginning to arrive, their faces full of curiosity and anticipation. Maye felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness swirl within her. This was her chance to make a real impact. But more than that, it was her chance to show people what she had discovered on her own journey, to help them take the first step towards their own reinvention. As the participants gathered for the opening session, Maye stood in front of them, feeling a surge of gratitude for the opportunity she had to share her message. She took a deep breath, steadied herself, and spoke. "We're here today because we're ready for change," she began, her voice clear and confident. "We're here to take the first step towards reinvention. Not just for the planet, but for ourselves. Let's begin this journey together." The ripple had begun. And Maye Musk knew that this was only the beginning. The retreat kicked off with an energy that filled the air like electricity. The participants, a diverse group of people seeking personal growth and sustainable transformation, gathered in the grand hall of the Santa Barbara venue. The open windows let in the crisp morning air, and the scent of the ocean mixed with the earthy fragrance of the surrounding hills. It felt like the perfect place to begin anew, to take that first bold step toward change. Maye stood at the front of the room, looking out over the group of eager faces. Her heart was racing. This was it, the culmination of months of planning, of hoping, and of personal reinvention. She had been down this road before, public speaking, presenting her ideas to others, but this felt different. This time, she wasn't just sharing her expertise. She was sharing a piece of herself, her own journey of growth and self-discovery. As the session began, Maye dove into the core philosophy of the retreat, sustainable reinvention. Reinvention doesn't just mean changing your career or your lifestyle, she explained. It's about discovering who you truly are beneath all the layers of society's expectations. It's about peeling away what's no longer serving you and embracing what's real and true to you. That's how we become sustainable, not just in our actions, but in our souls. The group nodded, some taking notes, others simply absorbing her words. Maye spoke with such sincerity that her words resonated deeply. It was as if she had tapped into something fundamental, something universal. For the next several days, the participants were immersed in workshops, mindfulness sessions, group activities, and one-on-one coaching. The retreat offered a perfect blend of environmental awareness and personal development. They planted trees, learned about eco-friendly living, and practiced mindfulness exercises that helped them reconnect with nature. They were encouraged to reflect on their goals and values, to write down their thoughts in journals, and to have open discussions with one another about their struggles and hopes. Throughout it all, Maye was present, not just as the organizer, but as a guide. She spent time with each participant, offering wisdom from her own life and providing insights that helped them look inward. She shared her story of reinvention, how, at every stage in her life, she had embraced change, even when it scared her. How she had learned that failure wasn't an endpoint, but a stepping stone to something greater. One evening, as the sun set and the group sat around a fire pit, Maye shared a personal moment with them. "When I was your age," she said, "I was often told that my dreams were too big. That I couldn't have it all, that I had to choose between family and career, between love and ambition. I listened to those voices for too long. But eventually, I realized that I didn't have to choose. I could have both. I could be both, a mother, a businesswoman, a change-maker." The group listened intently, their eyes fixed on her as she spoke. Maye's vulnerability had created a connection with them, one that went beyond the lessons and workshops. She wasn't just telling them how to change their lives, she was showing them that it was possible, through her own example. The next day, Maye took a group of participants on a nature hike, explaining the importance of sustainability and how small changes in their everyday lives could have a massive impact on the environment. They hiked through lush forests, up hills with sweeping views of the Pacific Ocean, and along the rugged cliffs that had stood for centuries. Maye spoke about the importance of living in harmony with nature, of listening to its rhythms and understanding the interconnectedness of everything. "Everything we do has an impact," she said. Every action we take, whether it's the food we eat, the clothes we wear, or the energy we consume, affects the world around us. Our choices shape the future of this planet. But we have the power to make better choices, to live more consciously. As they walked, May pointed out the native plants, the birds soaring overhead, and the crystal-clear water crashing against the shore. This, she said, her arms wide, is why we need to live sustainably. It's not just for the future, it's for right now. It's for the beauty of the world we have the privilege to enjoy. The retreat participants were deeply moved. It was one thing to learn about sustainability in a classroom or read about it in a book, it was another to experience it firsthand, to feel it in their bones as they stood in the midst of nature's grandeur. As the days passed, May could see the transformation taking place. People who had arrived with uncertainty or doubt were beginning to open up, to shed their old skins, and to embrace the possibility of something new. They shared their personal stories, stories of loss, of fear, of dreams that had been put on hold, and began to see how they could take control of their own narratives. By the end of the retreat, the participants had not only learned about sustainability in the environmental sense but had also learned how to sustain their own emotional and mental well-being. They had discovered tools for personal reinvention that would allow them to navigate life's challenges with confidence and purpose. But for May, the retreat was more than just a success in terms of content and participation, it was a reaffirmation of her own journey. As she watched the participants depart, one by one, she felt an overwhelming sense of pride. They had come looking for change, and now they were leaving with the tools to create it in their lives. She thought about her own reinvention, about the twists and turns that had led her to this moment. There had been doubt, yes, and failure, and pain. But those experiences had made her who she was today. She had learned that reinvention wasn't a single event, but a continuous journey, a journey that could only be fully embraced when one was ready to open their heart and mind to the endless possibilities that life had to offer. As the retreat concluded and the last participants headed home, May sat by herself for a moment, reflecting on all that had transpired. She thought about the next steps for the initiative, about how it would continue to grow and evolve. But most of all, she thought about how this retreat, this experience, had brought her closer to understanding her own purpose. And for the first time in a long time, she felt that the ripple effect she had created would stretch far beyond this weekend. It would touch lives, inspire change, and ripple out into the world in ways she hadn't yet imagined. The days following the retreat were a blur of activity for May. Her mind buzzed with the energy of the event, and she couldn't help but reflect on how much the participants had transformed. The retreat had sparked something within them, and now May was determined to ensure that the momentum continued to grow. May spent the first few days catching up on emails and phone calls, tying up loose ends from the retreat. But the conversations she had after the event kept lingering in her mind. She had heard countless stories of how people were already applying what they'd learned. Some had taken big steps, like changing careers or moving to more sustainable living arrangements, while others had made smaller but significant changes, like starting a journal or practicing daily mindfulness. As she sipped her morning coffee, May sat down at her desk to start outlining the next steps for her initiative. It was clear to her now that the retreat was just the beginning. She had touched the lives of a small group, but now she was ready to expand her reach. The world needed this message of reinvention and sustainability, and she was ready to spread it. She called her team together for a virtual meeting. Elon had been a quiet but steady source of support throughout the entire process, and she wanted to discuss her next big step. Elon, May began when he answered, "I've been thinking a lot about the next phase of this initiative. The retreat was a great success, but it's only a small piece of what I envision." Elon nodded from the other side of the screen. "I think it's time to scale it up. You've got something big here, Mom. People want this. They need this." "That's exactly it," May agreed. "But I want to make sure that we're not just providing a one-time experience. I want this to be a long-term movement, something people can engage with, even if they can't attend a retreat in person. We need to create a platform where people can share their own stories, get advice, and connect with others on a similar journey." Elon's face lit up. I can help with that. We can build an online platform, maybe even an app. It could feature courses, podcasts, workshops, and community discussions. You could have guest speakers, too, bring in environmental experts, mental health advocates, and life coaches to contribute content. I love that idea, Maye said, feeling the excitement bubble up again. This can become a resource hub, a place where people can get the tools they need to reinvent their lives. And it's not just about the physical world. It's about mental and emotional well-being, too. We can blend sustainability, mindfulness, and personal development into one cohesive space. The conversation quickly turned to logistics. The team began brainstorming ideas for the platform, how it would function, the types of content it would feature, and how to create a community that felt inclusive and supportive. Maye had always believed in the power of community, and now she was determined to build one online that mirrored the deep connections she had seen at the retreat. But there was another idea that had been growing in the back of Maye's mind, a collaboration with some of the biggest names in the wellness and environmental movements. Elon's presence in the tech world made it clear that their platform could not only reach thousands, but millions. The potential for global reach was there, but the question was how to make it authentic. Mom, what do you think about teaming up with some well-known figures? Elon asked, tapping into her thoughts. I'm talking about people who have the same philosophy you do, sustainability, reinvention, living with intention. Maye thought for a moment. She knew this would elevate the initiative to new heights. If she could align with those who had already built a platform for change, their voices would amplify her own. She started to consider potential collaborators, thought leaders in sustainability, top motivational speakers, and people who had successfully reinvented their own lives. I think we could really make an impact that way, Maye said. If we get people like Jane Goodall, Brené Brown, or even celebrities who are passionate about sustainability, people who embody reinvention, this could go from a small movement to a global force. The idea of collaborating with influential voices felt right to Maye. She knew she had something to offer, but in her heart, she also knew that this was about more than her, it was about the people who needed to hear the message. Together, they could spark change on a much larger scale. The plan was taking shape, but there was one more thing on Maye's mind, the impact her own family had on her journey. She had already been so fortunate to have the unwavering support of Elon and Tosca, but there was something else she needed to address, her relationship with her ex-husband, Errol. Despite their complicated history, Maye couldn't help but feel that she had a responsibility to reach out, to close the chapter on that part of her life in a way that was healthy, final, and full of closure. She took a deep breath and dialed his number, the familiar feeling of uncertainty creeping up her spine. The last time they had spoken had been years ago, and though they shared children, they hadn't had a real conversation in ages. Errol, she said when he picked up. It's Maye. I think it's time we talked. There was a long pause on the other end of the line before Errol's voice came through. Maye. It's been a long time. What's on your mind? I've been doing a lot of thinking, she said, her voice steady but warm. About the past, about the future, and about how I want to move forward. I've been working on something big, something that feels like the right next step in my life. And I realize that before I can fully step into this new chapter, I need to clear the air with you. Errol was silent for a moment. You know, Maye, I never thought you'd call. But I'm listening. They spent the next hour talking, about the past, the mistakes, the pain, and the growth that had happened since. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Maye needed to reconcile this chapter in her life, and this conversation, though difficult, was a key piece of her journey toward true reinvention. As she hung up the phone, she felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The chapter with Errol, though never perfect, was finally closed. The ripple effect of her journey, of the work she was doing with Greenlight and the Reinvention Initiative, was beginning to spread. Maye had taken the first step in her own transformation, and now she was setting the stage for others to do the same. She knew that her next steps would be challenging, but she was more than ready. Maye's mission had only just begun, and the world was waiting. The next few months were filled with intense planning, strategizing, and a whirlwind of activity. Maye's vision for a global movement of sustainable reinvention was beginning to take shape in ways she hadn't initially imagined. The platform, Greenlight, had evolved into something even bigger, an interactive online space with courses, guided meditation, virtual retreats, and a community forum where people could share their journeys. The website had gone live, and already the early access participants were flooding in, eager to join. But what really excited Maye was the upcoming public launch. It wasn't just about building a business, it was about creating a place where people could reinvent themselves, connect with others, and build a more sustainable future, both for themselves and for the planet. It was something she had dreamed about for so long, but now it was happening, and it felt surreal. With Elon's support and technical expertise, the platform was seamless, easy to navigate, intuitive, and beautifully designed. The content had been carefully curated, blending sustainability, mindfulness, and personal development in a way that resonated deeply with people from all walks of life. But now, it was time to share it with the world. The launch event was planned to be virtual, a high-energy live stream where Maye would introduce the platform, share her story, and welcome some of the biggest voices in sustainability and personal development to join the conversation. It was going to be her moment, and she was ready. The days leading up to the event were a mix of nerves and excitement. Maye's personal life had also undergone shifts. She had reconnected with Errol, which had brought closure to a long chapter of her life. Tosca was more involved than ever in her mother's work, helping with marketing and outreach. The entire family had come together to support Maye's mission, and that sense of unity kept her grounded as the pressure mounted. On the morning of the launch, Maye woke up early, feeling a mix of anxiety and anticipation. She had been through challenges before, starting a career in modeling, raising her children as a single mother, navigating life's unexpected twists, but this felt different. This was the culmination of years of growth, of reinvention, and now, she was ready to step into this new phase with confidence. She sat down at her desk, her laptop open in front of her. The countdown to the live event was ticking away, and Maye took a moment to reflect. She thought about the retreat in Santa Barbara, the people she had met, the changes she had witnessed in them. She thought about her own journey, how she had once been told that she couldn't have it all, but had proven, time and time again, that she could. This was more than just about her career, it was about helping others rewrite their own stories, just as she had rewritten hers. As the clock struck the hour, the first guests began to log into the live stream. Maye could hear the soft hum of conversation in the virtual room, people from all over the world who had registered for the event, eager to see what this platform had to offer. She smiled to herself, ready to welcome them all. "Welcome, everyone," she said as the live stream began, her voice warm and inviting. "I'm so thrilled to have you here for this special event. Today is not just the launch of a platform, it's the start of something bigger, a movement toward sustainable reinvention, where you can rewrite your story and build a life that truly aligns with your values." The stream was filled with hundreds of people watching in real time. The chat was buzzing with excitement, with viewers expressing their support and anticipation for what was to come. Maye felt a wave of gratitude wash over her, knowing that this was only the beginning. For the next hour, she shared her personal journey, how she had come to understand that reinvention was not a one-time event but an ongoing process. She talked about the importance of sustainability, not just in the environmental sense, but in how we approach our lives, our mental health, our emotional well-being, and our connections with others. Then, she introduced some of the platform's key features, including guided meditation sessions designed to help people reconnect with their inner selves, courses on sustainable living, and monthly live events that would feature guest speakers, experts, and thought leaders from around the world. Maye also unveiled a special section of the platform dedicated to community building, where users could connect with one another, share their stories, and offer support. She emphasized the importance of building a community that felt safe, inclusive, and empowering. But what really had people excited were the guest speakers. As promised, Maye had brought in some of the most influential figures in the realms of personal growth and sustainability. Brené Brown, the renowned researcher on vulnerability, joined to speak about the power of courage and connection. Jane Goodall, the world-renowned environmental activist, spoke passionately about how individuals could make a real impact in their communities by living sustainably. As the event went on, May realized something profound. The launch wasn't just about her platform, it was about the ripple effect she had started. She had ignited a spark in others, and now they were ready to carry that light forward into their own lives. The event culminated in a Q&A session, where May took questions from viewers. People asked about everything, from how to stay motivated during difficult times to how to begin making small sustainable changes in their daily lives. The questions were varied, but the underlying theme was clear: people were ready for change, and they were looking for the tools and support to help them navigate that transformation. By the end of the live stream, May felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The launch had been a resounding success, and she knew that this was just the start of something much larger. Her mission was unfolding before her eyes, and she had only just begun to scratch the surface of what was possible. As the event ended and the stream faded out, May sat back in her chair, letting out a long breath. The world had just taken its first step toward reinvention, and she had been there to help guide the way. But she wasn't done yet. There was so much more work to be done, so many more people to reach. May was ready for the challenge. And with the support of her family, her community, and her ever-growing network, she knew that together, they could create a future that was not only sustainable but full of possibility. The days following the launch were a whirlwind of media attention, emails, and messages from people around the world. May's inbox was flooded with heartfelt stories from individuals who had watched the live stream and were now eager to join the movement. Her social media accounts were buzzing with hashtags like #ReinventWithMay and #SustainableReinvention. People shared how they were inspired to make changes in their lives, from adopting a more sustainable lifestyle to pursuing long-deferred dreams of personal growth. The ripple effect had only just begun, but it was clear that May had ignited a spark that was quickly turning into a global wave. May's team was now working overtime to keep up with the demand. They were developing new content at a rapid pace, planning virtual workshops, and coordinating with influencers who could amplify their message. But for May, the real reward came in the form of the stories. Messages from women in small towns across the US, from young professionals in Europe, and from parents in Asia, all of them reaching out to share how the platform had already made a difference in their lives. One message stood out to May. It was from a woman named Emily, a single mother of 2 living in a rural part of North Carolina. Emily had watched the live stream while sitting in her small kitchen, trying to balance her day-to-day life with the overwhelming pressures of raising her children alone. She had been feeling stuck, caught between wanting to make a change but unsure of where to start. But after hearing May speak about the power of reinvention, Emily had been inspired to sign up for the platform. May sat back in her chair as she read Emily's message. Dear May. I don't know how to thank you enough for what you've created. I've been stuck in my routine for years, afraid of taking risks, of making changes. But after hearing your story and learning about Greenlight, I've realized that I have the power to change my life. I've started small, reduced my plastic use, began meditating every morning, and even started looking into career options that I've always been too scared to consider. It's a process, but for the first time in a long time, I feel hopeful. Thank you for giving me the tools to reinvent myself. With gratitude. Emily. The email left May with tears in her eyes. This was what she had hoped for, a chance to make a real impact on people's lives. She felt the weight of her mission in every word of Emily's message, and it reinforced her commitment to the work ahead. The platform wasn't just about sustainability or personal growth. It was about creating a space where people could feel empowered to take charge of their own narratives, no matter where they were in life. That afternoon, May decided to take a break from the overwhelming pace of work and reflect on how far she had come. She stepped outside into her garden, the air crisp and refreshing. The flowers were in full bloom, and the birds were chirping in the trees. May smiled as she breathed in the fresh air, grateful for this moment of peace. As she sat on the bench in her garden, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Elon. "Mom, have you seen the numbers for today? We're already at 200,000 active users across 15 countries. This is blowing up faster than we expected." She laughed softly to herself. "That's great," she texted back. "But I knew it would. People are ready for this." As the platform's reach grew, so did Maye's responsibilities. She had begun to receive invitations to speak at global conferences, share her story on popular podcasts, and collaborate with major brands in the sustainability space. The pressure was mounting, but so was her sense of purpose. She knew that she had the chance to help create a movement, not just a company, and that the work she was doing now would ripple out for years to come. But not everyone was thrilled by Maye's newfound success. Errol, her ex-husband, had always been a source of tension between her and Elon. While Maye had focused on personal growth and reinvention, Errol had remained critical of her choices. And now, as Greenlight gained momentum, he had become increasingly vocal in his doubts about her mission. He didn't fully understand the impact she was trying to create and often dismissed her efforts as a passing trend. His words weren't new to Maye, but they still stung. One afternoon, as Maye was preparing for an important interview with a major media outlet, Errol called her. She hadn't heard from him in a few weeks, so his call felt like an interruption. She hesitated before answering. "Errol," Maye said, her tone cautious but neutral. "What's going on?" "I see what you're doing," Errol replied, his voice tight with skepticism. "But you need to be careful. You're starting to get a lot of attention, and I'm worried about how this is all going to affect the kids." Maye's heart sank. She had anticipated this type of conversation, but it didn't make it any easier. "Errol, I've thought about that. I'm not doing this to hurt anyone, least of all our children. But this is my time, my chance to make something real happen, and I'm doing it for the right reasons," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'm not asking you to understand, but I'm asking you to trust me." There was silence on the other end of the line. She could hear him breathing, the weight of his thoughts heavy in the silence. "I just don't want you to get too carried away with all this attention. It's a lot of pressure, and people can turn on you quickly," Errol said, his voice softening. "Just, be careful, okay?" Maye closed her eyes for a moment, collecting her thoughts. She knew that Errol's fears were rooted in his own insecurities. He had always been protective, but it was clear to her now that his concern had little to do with the kids and everything to do with his own doubts. She had to focus on what truly mattered. "I'm always careful, Errol," she said, her voice firm. "But I also need to follow my own path. I hope, someday, you'll see that this is more than just a project for me. It's my purpose." The conversation ended shortly after, leaving Maye feeling unsettled but resolute. She knew that there would always be critics, whether it was Errol, or others who questioned her vision. But she had come too far to be swayed now. As the evening wore on, Maye gathered her strength for the interview. The pressure of her growing platform loomed large, but she knew that this was just the beginning. The global wave had started, and she wasn't going to let anything stop it. The week following the interview was like a dream come true. The media coverage had been overwhelming, with major outlets covering the launch of Greenlight, praising it as a new frontier for personal transformation and sustainability. The response from around the world had been beyond anything Maye had anticipated. People were not just logging in, they were engaging. They were becoming part of a global conversation on how to reinvent their lives and live more sustainably. Maye's name was now on the lips of influencers, activists, and thinkers. Her story of reinvention, from model to entrepreneur, from mother to mentor, had captured the imagination of millions. It was the kind of narrative that people resonated with, especially in times of uncertainty. People were looking for answers, for ways to navigate the complexities of modern life, and Maye's platform provided just that. But she knew that the real work had only just begun. In the midst of all the excitement, Maye's family had remained by her side. Elon continued to support her behind the scenes, helping with the technical and logistical aspects of Greenlight. He was proud of his mother, though he still found it amusing that she was now the one getting all the attention. Their relationship had grown even stronger during this time, with Elon expressing a newfound respect for her vision and determination. Tosca, too, had been instrumental in the platform's success. Her creativity and expertise in branding had helped create an image that was both modern and authentic. She had also become a mother figure to many of the younger members of the community who reached out for guidance on balancing their personal and professional lives. Tosca's role in the project was undeniable, and Maye couldn't have been more grateful for her daughter's unwavering commitment. But even with all the success, Maye found herself reflecting more deeply on the meaning of it all. She had built a platform that was helping others to reinvent themselves, but in the process, she was also reinventing herself. It wasn't just about business or success, it was about creating a legacy. One night, after another late night of meetings and strategy sessions, Maye sat in her living room, staring out the window at the city lights twinkling below. The world seemed to have shifted. The trajectory of her life had changed forever. She wasn't the same person who had walked into that car dealership so many months ago, rejected and dismissed. She had faced so much adversity in her life, missteps, failures, and doubts, but each of those challenges had led her here. Now, she was not just building a business, she was helping to change the way people thought about themselves, their potential, and their impact on the world. And as she reflected on all she had accomplished, Maye felt a deep sense of peace wash over her. She had achieved what she set out to do. She had taken the rejection, the setbacks, the doubts, and used them as fuel for something greater. She was creating a space for people to feel empowered, to grow, and to embrace change. But perhaps more importantly, she had created a space where people felt seen. For so long, Maye had been overlooked, underestimated, and dismissed. Now, she was being recognized not for who others thought she was, but for who she had always known she could be. She picked up her phone and sent a text to Elon. "Elon, I want to thank you. Your support means more than you'll ever know. We're building something incredible here. I can't wait to see where we go next." A few moments later, her phone buzzed with his reply. "You're welcome, Mom. You did all the hard work. This is just the beginning." Maye smiled, feeling the weight of his words. She had truly built something that was changing lives. It wasn't just a business. It was a movement. And it was bigger than she could have ever imagined. The following morning, as Maye was preparing for another big meeting, the doorbell rang. She was surprised to see a package delivered to her doorstep. When she opened it, she found a sleek black envelope with a note inside. The note read, "Congratulations, Maye. You've not only reinvented your life, but you've given others the tools to do the same. We're excited to see what you'll do next. You've inspired us all. The Greenlight team." There was also a silver key included with the note. It was elegant, simple, but heavy in her hand. As she stared at it, Maye couldn't help but smile. It was symbolic of everything she had worked for, the key to unlocking her potential, and the potential of so many others. It was a reminder that her journey wasn't just about her, it was about every person who had found their path through her work. That afternoon, Maye took a break from her usual routine and walked through her garden. She found herself reflecting on her early days as a model and the challenges she had faced as a young woman navigating the fashion world. She thought about the time when she had been rejected from the car dealership and how far she had come since that moment. It had been more than a year, but in that time, she had built something that wasn't just for her. It was for everyone who had ever felt dismissed, overlooked, or afraid to change. Greenlight had given people the tools to break free from their limitations and embrace their potential. She knew this was only the beginning. And with that realization, Maye made a decision. She was going to expand Greenlight, beyond the digital platform, beyond the workshops and courses. She was going to create physical spaces, global retreats, and events where people could connect, learn, and grow together. Her mission was to reach millions, to help them discover their power and purpose, just as she had discovered hers. The next phase of Greenlight was already in motion, and Maye felt the weight of that new chapter beginning to unfold. It was no longer just about reinvention, it was about transformation on a global scale. She smiled to herself. The world was ready. And Maye Musk was ready to lead the way. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?